Hi, and welcome to Tapped into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox. I'm the publisher of Tap into Hoboken, Tap into Jersey City, and Tapped into Bayonne. And I'm joined again today by reporters Chris Halleron and Sullivan. Before we get into the show too much today, though, I want to introduce our readers and our viewers to a young man in Jersey City, 7-year-old Modak Kumar. You're going to see Modak pop up on your screen. We were contacted by Modak's father earlier this week regarding some health issues that he's facing right now, and he's in need of a kidney transplant. So we hope that maybe by sharing his story quickly, which we also did online today, we might be able to find him the help he needs so he can go back to being a healthy and happy second grade student at the Golden Door Charter School. With that, we're going to get into our show. Al, we're going to be talking to Michael Harper in a few minutes. Michael, of course, from the Board of Elections here in Hudson County, and he's going to talk a bit about the mechanics of the election and what we're facing come Tuesday. But before we get into that part, I thought we'd talk a little bit about what our local voters are considering besides the presidential race and the Senate race. And we start in Bayonne. We start with the school board races.
Yes, that's the principal one.
And we've got 9 candidates running for 3 seats.
Technically 3 tickets.
Yep.
The most controversial is Michael Alonso, which is basically running with a Trump, even though it's a nonpartisan. You have 3 incumbents who now control. They are running, and then you have a ticket led by Dennis Wilbeck Jr., even though Dennis Wilbeck is on the board, and they are trying to get back into power. They had been controlling the board primarily when basically the ticket led by Volato and Chris Munoz took over last time. Now they're trying to get back into power. It's shuffling. Munoz and Volato have been endorsed by Mayor Davis, and behind the scenes is the Assemblyman Nick Schiavoletti. That's a very powerful ticket.
And they have a third running mate who's a former band teacher.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Watson.
Mr. Watson, right. And Mr. Watson is well respected. So that's a tough ticket to beat. But they're all named people except for the Alonso ticket, which is he's the best known on that ticket. And they are mostly newcomers.
And board member Alonso drew some attention to himself earlier this year.
He made inappropriate remarks on Facebook about potential riots.
What others believe are inappropriate.
What
he didn't think they were inappropriate.
He didn't think they were appropriate, but at the timing was inappropriate. Let me put it that way. It had followed the Floyd death and the protests, and he raised the question as to whether there would be riots in Hoboken, right, in Bayonne, and that brought out protests from Black Lives Matter, plus the other board members who have asked for his resignation, which he didn't.
And of course, there were no violent protests in Bayonne. Everything was very peaceful.
It was very peaceful. I mean, there was one minor confrontation, which was verbal, but most of it, in fact, the main event was incredibly moving. So it was like, he was totally off.
And you mentioned the Wilbecks, Dennis Wilbeck and Dennis Wilbeck Jr.
Yes.
They could potentially both serve together.
Yes, they could.
Has that happened before? Is there any precedent for that you know of?
Well, Bayonne's a family town, and there have been relatives of each other on the board, but not that close.
That would be very interesting.
And the fact that Dennis is campaigning for his son, so it's almost like he's running again.
Right.
So, which is interesting.
Right.
The people sort of like go, "Why are you doing this?" Well, he's my son. I've approached him, and I said, I hear you're campaigning again. My son's running.
If you can't trust your own blood, who can you trust?
Absolutely.
I guess. And now, based on your extensive reporting, certainly over the past few months, it seems like a big issue that we're talking about with the schools is future schools construction in Bayonne. And how that would materialize in the next coming years.
The last year's election was primarily about the concept of creating middle schools. The schools were overcrowded. That was before Marist High School announced that they were closing. And so those students are now, many of those students that were in Bayonne are now going to go to Bayonne schools, which adds the pressure. The mayor had said his administration would help the schools. So they have put a bid on Marist High School property, which is a sizable facility. It's fairly new compared to some of the existing schools. and it could become a middle school, also a recreation center. The question is what the board makeup is going to be, and whether they're willing to. We have a mayoral election coming up, not next year, but the year after.
Sure.
Are they willing to give the mayor that clout? And so there's going to be conflict there as to whether the mayor can make this happen and get a board elected that would facilitate it.
It always comes back to who's going to be in power.
Right.
And it's the same over in Jersey City. You have two slates running against each other.
Yeah.
Education matters and change for children.
Yes. Well, the conflict there is that one is union backed and the other one appears to be backed by corporate. And the corporate people are angry over the payroll tax. So they sort of put up a ticket last year and funded it. And last year was one of the most expensive Board of Ed races ever in Jersey City history. This year it's quieter, partly because there's been a shift in the corporate makeup, but LeVrac, which is basically the waterfront, is still backing the ticket. And they're running against a union, a well-established union ticket with incumbents who are very strong and have good record. So it's going to be, the issue here is really bigger than the Board of Ed. You have funding shortages, how to make up for loss of state revenue. You have issues of diversity because the Heights schools tend to be better occupied, and there seems to be a racial issue there, while Greenville, there's a lot of pressure. So the board is faced with all of these issues, and who gets on there will have to deal with that.
Absolutely. And Al, before we run out of time here, Mayor Fulop, he stayed quiet on the school board races, but he's certainly been very visible when it comes to the Ward D race.
Yes.
And those are the candidates seeking to fill the term of Councilman Michael Youn,
Right.
whom we lost earlier this year.
Well, Sala is a good candidate. Okay, he's new and he's progressive, but he's not overly progressive. So he's well accepted by both the riverfront for the most part and for what are called Old Jersey City Heights. I talked to the Ward C councilman, which is Balgiano, who was friends with Young, and he likes this kid. He likes all four of them. There are 5 candidates. 4 of them are up front. One no one's ever heard of. They're all well qualified, but he has the mayor's support, and he seems to be quote unquote tapped into the community.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for working in Tapped In.
Yeah.
Chris, we're going to come to you in the next segment. With that, we'll see you in a couple minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
It has actually changed my life. It's wonderful to be in recovery. I'm also a grandpa, a great-grandpa. I found joy in being abstinent from use.
I'm a family member, I'm a productive member of society, I'm a dog owner, things like that. I'm a fiance. So I think that recovery means on such a broad scale, there's so many different layers to what recovery means to me.
We're just like everyone else. We have heart and soul. It's just that we have this substance abuse disorder and that we're dealing with that. And if anything, it makes us a little bit stronger.
The most important thing for people in the communities to know is that they're just like anyone else, and that they don't necessarily want to be doing the things that they're doing, and it's a chronic illness and it's a chronic disease that needs to be addressed as so.
Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, Jersey City. Hudson County's only monument maker, serving all faiths and cemeteries. Design, studio, and large inventory on site. Cemetery inscriptions and custom orders welcome. Burns Brothers Memorials, Monuments, and Markers, 787 Tunley Avenue, just south of Secaucus Road. Craftsmanship that will last for all eternity. Burns Brothers, Jersey City, Albert H. Harper, North Arlington. Visit us on the net. Consumer Carpets, 3408 Kennedy Boulevard in the Jersey City Heights, your one-stop store for residential and commercial floor treatments, carpeting, linoleum, tiles, laminates, hardwood floors, area rugs, remnants, all major brands, all in stock. Free estimates, same-day installation. Consumer Carpets, it's savings, selection, installation. Credit cards and debit cards accepted. Financing available. Consumer Carpets. Price to fit your budget. Installation to fit your schedule. On the net at consumercarpets.com. Consumer Carpets, Jersey City, 201-792-2712.
And welcome back to Tapped into Hudson. Chris, we're going to come over to you now. We talked to Al about Jersey City and Bayonne. Now in Hoboken, there are 3 school board candidates running, but they're running unopposed. So it's a pretty uneventful race. There is no race.
There's no race to speak of, but there were endorsements given up by Mayor Bala and by 2 of his allies on the council who took the initiative to endorse the unopposed candidates, who were Sharon Angley, who is the president of the Board of Ed, and then Melanie Takirian and Chitali Khanna. And once again, they're running unopposed, which is unique for Hoboken because it's usually a very feisty contest.
There's not many elections that aren't knockdown, drag-out brawls in Hoboken is probably what you're trying to say.
It can be. Yeah. It can be pretty dramatic.
So something you've written a lot about, though, in the past few weeks in Hoboken is this idea of school funding and how it should be allotted when we're talking about pilot agreements, how the school funding gets allotted between the public schools and the public charter school classrooms. This has taken up a lot of chatter in the past couple of city council meetings. Seems like there's maybe a proxy fight between the different factions there. Is this something we're going to be hearing more about in the coming weeks?
Whether it's this issue specifically or just the public schools versus charters, that's, it's something that's reared its ugly head once again. The discussion was held a couple weeks ago asking what was going to happen with the pilot money from 770 Jackson, which stems from an agreement that was approved in 2017. When it came to the topic of allocating those funds, questions were raised as to how it would be broken down, whether it would go to the public schools or whether it would go split between the public and the charters. So the mayor sent out a Nixle alert the following day, which is pretty assertive of him to weigh in with that sort of voice that soon after the meeting, saying that the money would in fact go to the public schools if he had it the way he wanted it. That picked a scab on a very, very polarizing topic in Hoboken, and then we got back into the whole public versus charter. And one can only speculate as to why you'd want to ramp that discussion up once again, heading into what's going to be a very heated campaign for the municipal elections coming up next year.
And Chris, you mentioned something interesting there. He sent out a Nixle alert, you said.
He did.
The Nixle alert, of course, is it's an app service that residents sign into to get updates on snow events or storm surges or whatever the case may be. But in this instance, it was used for a school funding issue.
It was used for a school funding issue.
Would that be common?
Would it be common? It's becoming more common. It's been used quite frequently, and obviously for COVID concerns and issues that you spoke of, weather events. But to see it used for a school funding issue raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah. And you just mentioned COVID there, and of course we go another week and we can't get away from COVID discussions, especially in Hoboken, where we keep seeing pictures of folks lining up outside for COVID tests. Mm-hmm. We see numbers going up there in terms of positive tests, unfortunately. But we also do see Mayor Bala taking some action. We see him teaming up with the city council to declare that parties of over 25 will be fined.
Right.
And just last night, he declared that closing time will be midnight now at bars.
Closing times at midnight.
Okay.
And that's an executive order, so that's not really as far as I know, that's going to be put into place. That will be implemented. And then with the house party situation, I don't know who's putting 25 people in Hoboken apartments for social gatherings. It's certainly not me. They're pretty small apartments. I don't know if I have 25 friends that I would invite over. So, but it's happening. From reports we're getting, over half the calls that the Hoboken Police Department received for house parties had seen numbers that high jammed into these apartments. So it is a thing. And the first reading for this ordinance was unanimously approved by the council, and it kind of looks like it's going to go that way in the next reading. The executive order is another thing that's taking aim squarely at Hoboken's social life and social activities, and this one's a little different because Hoboken was one of the first in the nation to clamp down on its hospitality industry, and it's a very vibrant and very vital industry in Hoboken, and they've been able to work with establishments to do outdoor dining and do everything they can to sort of get things back on track as much as they can. And now, with this decision to sort of come in and arbitrarily put a cap on things at midnight, yeah, it makes sense for the restaurants. You know, they're not going to be impacted, but there are a lot of bars in Hoboken, as I can attest to, as a lot of us can attest to. And as someone who's been on both sides of that bar, I used to attend bar in Hoboken, and I can tell you that, you know, there's a lot of money to be made from 12 o'clock on in Hoboken. And it's not a raucous party scene. It's people who are out later, people who have, for whatever reason, come out later at night and gone to, frankly, a safer atmosphere on weekdays. You know, weekends it can get a little rowdy in there. But you know, the situation where they come in and just say that, you know, you have to close at this hour is taking money out of the pockets of people who were, you know, otherwise adhering to the rules and regulations.
Right.
You know, there's social distancing being enacted, the 25% occupancy. I mean, these rules are in place. So if they're being upheld at 11:55. There's no reason they can't be upheld at 12.
It's all part of this larger debate. And Chris, you mentioned that the city council is probably poised to pass this ordinance in terms of house parties unanimously, as they did on first reading. What surprised me when we published the story this past weekend, it was panned. I mean, there was a lot of people who came out and said, no, we're not happy about this. Who are you to dictate how many people we can have in our houses? What is the reaction in Hoboken when you're walking the streets and you're in the businesses and you're talking to readers and residents and other folks? What are they telling you about how Hoboken is responding to COVID these days, the second wave?
I think a word that will always be used to describe Hoboken is polarizing. You know, whether it's school boards or whether it's social life or whether it's the hospitality industry or whatever. You know, it's very reminiscent of the St. Patrick's Day parade discussions years ago, probably about 15 years ago, when they tried to clamp down on those. So they went after the bars and shut down the bars. Well, that squeezed everybody out into the house parties and created
And the bar crawls too.
And the bar crawls, and
Yeah.
it just created a worse problem. So to have both these issues on hand, you know, days before Halloween, which is always a very busy night for Hoboken hospitality industry, it seems sort of pointed and seems targeted. Whereas, you know, a lot of people are up in arms about it, particularly bar owners and bar patrons. Other people are like, look, this has to stop. You know, there's a pandemic going on. So, you know, you can see both sides of the issue. And you know, I think people are looking for answers and they're not asking the right questions. And, you know, as someone who's been in that business and made a living in that business, I think there are other ways to go about it, but I don't know what the right answer is. You know, it's really a tough situation for what is a vital industry in that town.
Unfortunately, it seems the reality is none of us know what the right answer is. We just have to keep going along and getting along and trying to stay healthy. We're obviously maintaining our 6 feet of social distance here on the set, as are our friendly crew with their masks on behind the cameras. With that, we're going to finish up this segment with Chris Halleron. Again, we are so grateful for you to join us here at Tapped Into Hudson. We'll see you on the other side of the commercial break.
Good Friend Self Storage in North Bergen, New Jersey is a fully climate-controlled facility equipped with state-of-the-art security, packing supplies, a Refer Friend program, and multiple loading docks convenient for commercial use. Located just off of Route 3 at 4301 Tunnelly Avenue, Route 1 and 9. Call 201-867-2444 or visit us on the web today. Good Friend Self Storage. Let us be your good friend.
Stevens Jersey City Ford, located right off of NJ 440 North. Across the Hudson Mall is your one-stop for all your automotive needs. Check out Ford's latest models like the 2020 Ford Fusion with its stylish looks and hybrid options, or the unparalleled high-performance 2020 Ford Mustang. The 2020 Ford F-150 Raptor is ready for those rugged off-road terrains with trail control. Need a mid-sized truck for your towing and hauling? The 2020 Ford Ranger will deliver. The 2020 Ford Escape is a luxury SUV that was made for comfort and adventure on the go. Returning is Ford's legendary Bronco, which takes you back to the true meaning of off-roading. They are now available for pre-order in our showroom or on our website. Let us help you find your next vehicle. Stevens Jersey City Ford, 201-432-7272.
Newport, the luxury waterfront community on the Hudson River, offers the quality of life you deserve in 10 high-rise rental towers with amenities such as the on-site Newport Path subway, light rail and ferry service, Newport Town Square, 3 playgrounds, dog run, upscale restaurants, Retail giants like Sears, JCPenney, Macy's, and Target. Morton Williams Supermarket is just outside your front door. A health and fitness club, spa, skating rink, and medical facilities are also on site. NewportNJ.com. Enjoy the New York skyline from Newport Town Square. Manhattan is just one path stop away or quick ride through the Holland Tunnel. Nursery and private elementary schools all on site. 12-screen movie theater at the Newport Center Mall. Want to visit Newport? Stay at the Westin or Marriott Hotel. Go to NewportNJ.com for details. Newport has luxurious towers, great restaurants, shopping, New York skyline views, schools, playgrounds, a marina and yacht club, gym, spa, fine wine, fine living. It's incredible. It's you. NewportNJ.com. Newport, live like you want.
Hi, and welcome back to Tapped into Hudson. I'm Steve Lenox. I'm the publisher of Tap into Hoboken, Tap into Bayonne, and Tap into Jersey City. I'm joined now for this segment with Michael Harper. He's the clerk to the Board of Elections for Hudson County. Michael, how are you today?
Excellent, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Good, Michael. It's a pleasure to have you. I think you'll agree it's safe to introduce you as the guy who is working 24/7 to make sure every ballot is counted in Hudson County this year. Is that about accurate?
We are certainly putting our time in. Yeah.
Yeah.
A normal presidential election, Steve, we could probably get 13 to 15,000 ballots here in Hudson County. We have 150,000 in already, and I'm expecting at least another 50 to 70 before Election Day.
So about 10,000 a day between now and next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's about right.
And Michael, can you spend a minute or so just describing the voting process for those voters that haven't cast their ballots yet, what they need to be paying attention to and what action they need to take?
Surely, Steve. I mean, as we all know at this point, this was the governor ordered a primarily vote by mail election due to the pandemic. Hudson County sent 370 to 380,000 ballots out. As I said, we've received back about 150,000 already. I know there's been a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and gaslighting about the way this election is being held. I think the most important thing for people to realize, I hear it all the time, all over the county. People stop me and say, you could stand in line at Walmart, you could stand in line at the DMV. Why can't I stand in line and vote? And there are certainly still an in-person option. But as far as just to wrap up quickly on vote by mails, the issue there is you could stand online at DMV and Walmart today and probably tomorrow. The governor had to make a call on this 3 months ahead of time, at a time when you couldn't really predict what 3 weeks was going to hold. So I think the governor, and as an election official, I understand. I think the governor rightfully feared that those polling places might not be available on election day, and not to give people that option to get it in ahead of time. If something happens, even now towards the end of this week, where I'm on some sort of no public gathering order, where I can't even safely put my poll workers in a given place, never mind voters, you would have successfully just disenfranchised 6 million people, and I think that was the fear. So vote by mails are working, as there are some other in-person voting options out there. For the first time, a voter is allowed now, if they have not sent back their vote by mail, which you probably know what those look like at this point. If they have not sent that back yet, there's still time, certainly, to get it into any one of our drop boxes. We have 17 of those stationed around the county. There's one in front of every town hall of the 12 municipalities in Hudson County. There are some additional ones in Jersey City, given the size of it. There's one in each ward. But they could also, for the first time, drop their vote by mail at a polling site, which is a first here in New Jersey. We never allowed that. It was always considered late by the time it got back to us, but we are allowing that this election. In person, they could also vote via provisional, which is another form of paper ballot. But again, another thing. There's so much misinformation about. I hear all the time, they're not going to count those unless they change the results of the election. That is totally not true. Every provisional is counted. We do vet them heavily to make sure that they are a registered voter and that they did not vote in any other way, or by mail specifically. But if you end up voting by provisional ballot, those ballots will be counted. It will be after the election. My advice to everyone is really at this point, get those vote by mails in, because we plan on having 70 to 80% of our vote counted on election night. We're counting already. That was another change in this election, that the governor allowed us to start counting. Actually, I think that was by legislation, actually. But so the legislature allowed us to start counting 10 days early, and we did that. We started this weekend. We probably have 40,000 ballots run through the system already. We can't look at numbers yet. We won't release our first numbers till election night. But at that point, I really plan on releasing 200,000 of Hudson County's votes. If that holds true across all of New Jersey, and all the counties have 70 to 80% of their votes counted on election night, that's, I believe, we'll have a substantial number in, and you want to be part of that. If you wait until
Michael, you're a great interview because you answer the questions before they're even asked, which is wonderful. You've obviously done this before. But let's go back to the issue of ballot security. We've heard several concerns about we're filling out ballots in pencil, we're dropping them in boxes, we don't know where they're going. Can you talk a little bit more about the chain of security when it comes to the ballots, what you do with them once you get them, how they're counted?
Yeah, Steve, vote by mail, paper voting is a very safe form of voting. It's not our culture. In Hudson County and New Jersey in general, we have small neighborhood-based districts. Everyone's used to getting down to their local school or firehouse and seeing their friends and neighbors and their poll workers who work every election. And that is our culture. Hudson County in particular is, even in a normal year, is not a heavy vote by mail county. But that being said, this gaslighting about paper ballots and vote by mails in general, one, I find it rather insulting to the 5 states that do voting entirely by mail, and those 5 states, not coincidentally, are amongst the best voter participation, highest turnout states in our nation. Paper ballots. Look, there was a lot of concern about the U.S. Postal Service before this election, and we were throwing a lot on them relatively unexpectedly. I could only speak for Hudson County. The U.S. Postal Service is working in Hudson County. The average turnaround from when we send out a ballot to when somebody gets is about 2 days. I found about the same with them coming back. So, the process, that works. Those drop boxes that we talked about, we pick those up directly, the Board of Elections. Every single day, we send a team out to get them, a Democrat and a Republican. There's a metal insert in that box. So it comes out, we lock it there, put a seal on it, bring it back here to the county building where they're counted in front of a room full of people. Every part of this of our process is overseen. I answer to the Board of Elections. That's a 6-member board, 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, all appointed by the governor. Everything here is done on a bipartisan basis. There is oversight every step of the way. I know people have certain concerns. I'm surrounded by ballots, as I am my entire life now. They don't really want to use any of them because they have people's names on them. But
Sure.
That's the certification inside the ballot. That makes a lot of people nervous. I think they think that their name is attached to the ballot and someone's going to see how they voted. Do know the entire system is built to make your vote count accurately and anonymously. There is we what we call strip that cert off the ballot before counting. At that point, that anonymous inner envelope is sent to a second room where it's opened and a third room where it's counted.
Michael, thank you for spending the time with us today. I'm glad we gave our readers and our viewers a chance to learn more about the voting process. Good luck with the count in the coming weeks, and we'll see you soon. Thank you to all of our readers for tuning in again to Tapped into Hudson.